The Magicians podcast is brought to you in proud association with the Magic Circle, Alakazam Magic, and Gigio.
I literally did nothing, and I definitely fell into a depression. Like I was in a bad place.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Magicians podcast. Richard Young here. Thank you very much for pressing the download button. I'm not sure where you press the download button, but I just wanted to share a little bit of information for you, particularly if you have an Android phone. That is that we're now available in some new places. We've always been on iTunes, Podbean and Stitcher, but we are now also available on Google Play Music and Spotify, which is a huge platform, and I understand that's particularly good news if you have an Android phone. So if you do, that's where you'll be able to find us now in addition to the usual places. Please spread the word about that. Now, it's Christmas time, and I gift you these podcasts every week. I hope you like them, and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind doing me a little favour in return, which is to leave us a review on iTunes. We've been away for a while, and so we've slipped down the rankings on the search engine sort of optimization side of the podcast app on iTunes, and the reviews really help that, I understand. So if you've got 10 minutes, pop onto iTunes and leave the Magicians podcast a review. I would really sincerely appreciate that. We've got a great episode coming up today. As I mentioned in episode 1 of the new series, I really wanted to diversify a little bit the guests on this series, and as you know, I've been travelling abroad, so we've got some more international guests, but also we've got some guests who are not exclusively known as magicians. Paul Zerdin was episode 1, of course he's a ventriloquist, and this week I'm talking to Matt Edmondson, who the public know as a radio presenter and a television presenter. Well, Matt has actually been a magician for his whole life. In fact, me and him were members of the Young Magicians Club together, and recently he's actually been producing some magic TV shows, things you might have heard of, or certainly some things you may hear about in the near future. Matt is a fascinating guy. He's always got multiple projects on the go, and I think if you fancy yourself potentially down the road as a TV magician, you really want to listen to this episode. Matt's got a fascinating insight into where he thinks magic on television is going to go over the next few years. But before we get to the interview, it's time to check in with our great friend Alan Hudson and find out what's going on. Alan Hudson, what's going on?
Richard Young, what's going on with you? I'm in Hull. That's what I'm doing.
You're in Hull?
Yeah, Hull. Seen the family, seen the friends from Hull originally. And so we're recording this on Boxing Day, aren't we? And I'm just about to go to my mum's house for second Christmas dinner.
Amazing. You lucky man. Let's get right to it, Hudson. Let's get straight into it. What is your fee on New Year's Eve?
I'm not working New Year's Eve.
Are you not?
No, I put in a few things for people, but there's nothing exciting, to be honest, nothing interesting.
Sorry, when you say you put in a few things, what you mean is you put in a few leech fees, right?
I asked somewhere that I might want to go to, see if they wanted me, and they didn't. And I had 1 or 2 inquiries for various places, so I put in a very, very high nice fee, and they said no. And I went, well, that's great, because I get to spend New Year's Eve off with my family. And I say family, I mean friends.
Is your wife working?
No, she's not.
Direction?
No, she's not. So we're going to spend it in Hull. So it's going to be brilliant.
It's never really been a big night for close-up inquiries, has it, if we're being honest? It's not like a Friday in December. You don't get that volume of inquiries for it. Do you find that, or am I...
Yeah, I always find it's just a few hotels, really. And, hotels that do a sort of, set meal, and then they want you there for about 3 hours. It's never that interesting, is it? It's never that exciting. There's no great... Well, for me, there's no jobs that I've ever been excited about doing. So, it's got to be a high fee. Otherwise, I'd rather spend it with family and friends.
So it is New Year's, though, and we're looking forward to the new year. What is coming up immediately in January that we should be excited about? January, February?
I'm working 3rd, 4th, 5th.
Are you? How many of those gigs were from Richard Young? How many of those gigs were from Richard Young on the 3rd, 4th and 5th?
Yeah, 2 of them for you. Thanks very much.
There you go.
15% commission. And
that's going up to 20 in the new year, just to let you know. 15%. It's not 1989 anymore, all right? Commission these days should be 20%. That's controversial, isn't it?
Or 37.5% if you ask some people.
Yeah, that's true. We won't name those people.
Yeah, so what's going on? The session's coming up, isn't it? I think I might go to the session this year.
Very excited about this. Yeah, Matt King.
It's
amazing.
A brilliant lineup. Ben Seedman is coming, and who I met at the Magic Castle this year, and I'd seen his work previously, so I'm quite excited about seeing his show. He's doing a full show. The lineup, Matt King, just like one of the best comedy magicians in the world. And who else? It's just a phenomenal lineup, isn't it? It's just brilliant. And I've not been for a few years because I normally go away on holiday in January, but this year I think I might. I'm not decided yet, and it's probably going to be sold out by the time I decide to go. But I might do. Yeah. Are you going?
Yeah, I think I am going to pop in at some point. It looks like an amazing lineup this year. So it's on from the 11th to the 13th. It's called The Session and the Event, which is the mentalism thing, I think, isn't it, that Luke Germain does? Is that right?
Yeah, that's the day before, isn't it? So
Andy Nyman's lecturing this year. Andy and Josh have exceeded themselves, haven't they, this year?
Yeah, they have. They've pulled it out of the bag. That is, I'm just looking at the lineup now. They've got Max Maven, Michael Webber. Do you know what I mean? It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
And what else is anyone doing on the 11th, 12th and 13th of January? Nothing, right? Nothing. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. Right. I'll tell you what else. Blackpool's coming up as well, isn't it? That's now we're looking ahead there into February, right? But do you know what reminded me of Blackpool is I've just seen on Blackpool Magician Conventioneers site. Did you watch this video by
on the what?
There's a Facebook page, right, for Blackpool.
I think I know what you mean.
Have you seen it?
You stay in that the whole year?
Yeah, of course. There's been a good little video. There's a guy called James Ripley that just got his Christmas present. So he's sat there dressed as an elf, and it starts off like you go, "Oh, who's this guy?" Right, just as an elf, he's put a little video on the Blackpool Magician Facebook page, and you go, "Oh, what's he doing?" He's probably just received like a new deck of cards or something like that, and you just go, "Why is he putting that up?" And you go, "Oh, this is going to be terrible." And then it's just the best video I've seen for ages.
Oh, is it like you don't want to give away spoilers? Just go and watch it, or?
I think so. Do you know what? It'll probably make you cry.
Really?
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice, and it just, you take things for granted, don't you? If you've been doing something for a long, long time, you just take it for granted. Well, this guy gets something that he's never had before, and it's a Christmas present, and he starts crying. Do you know what? Just go and watch it. It's a really lovely video. It's a guy called James Ripley, and brilliant.
Oh, fantastic!
Go and watch it.
Go
and watch it after this.
Hey, you know what? What's great about this podcast? We can just talk about anything. Have you seen that Kevin Spacey video?
Yes, I have.
You seen?
Yeah, I watched it yesterday. It's brilliant.
Did you? Yeah. So I was a big House of Cards fan.
Yeah, me
on
too.
Netflix. And, of course, the last season was ruined because he was removed from it because of all the allegations against him. But he's just put out this video. Look, most people hate it, but my God, what an actor. Isn't he incredible as an actor?
Oh, what a treat that was. Absolute treat to see Frank back. And just that bit was good. You missed me?
Yeah, it's just like everyone hates it, but he's meant to be innocent till proven guilty, but everyone's just assuming he's guilty. As far as I'm concerned, until he's proven guilty, he is free to release videos on YouTube for everyone's amusement. So it was a great. If you're a House of Cards fan, look that up because Frank Underwood is back for 3 minutes.
But isn't he one of those people where everyone has said he is guilty? Like, do you know when there's enough? The smoke without fire sort of thing. But when there's enough smoke, when it's billowing out, there's probably going to be a fire. So I think it's one of those well-known things in Hollywood that people have said, like people like Lena Dunham come forward and said when she first got into acting, people have said, a couple of things. One, don't get close to Harvey Weinstein. Two, don't get close to Kevin Spacey. You know what I mean? As if it's like a well-known thing in Hollywood. Like in magic, if there was like a little thing in magic that we all knew about, right, that people have been in it for a long time. I think...
Careful.
I'm being very careful. I'm not saying there is. There definitely is not. But if there was, we would all know about it.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think in the acting world, I think it's a similar thing from what I've heard.
If Kevin Spacey is guilty, then I hope they throw the book at him. But there's a side to me that really hopes he's innocent, because what an actor! He's just an amazing actor. But there we go. Anyway, let's talk about last week, Josephine's episode. I take it you did listen. That's the whole reason you're here, right?
I did listen. Yeah, really good. I like the fact that it sounded like you took her to a restaurant with all the background noise.
People thought I took her on a date. We did meet in a restaurant because it's just location, geography of where I live and where she lives. It was kind of in the middle, and then we got there and there was just nowhere quiet. So I apologise to any podcast purists out there who found the background noise irritating. I'm sorry. But I do my best every time to try and find somewhere quiet, and just sometimes it isn't possible. And this was one example. So
and in the end, the quietest place you could find was a romantic restaurant.
Table for two.
Did she know she was on a podcast?
Yeah, she knew she was on a podcast. It was a really great evening, actually. As was always the case, I've shared before that the podcast interview was really great fun, but you just hear so much more interesting stuff after you stop the podcast recording.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe one day, many years from now, I'll be able to write a book about all the crazy stuff I've heard over the years after the record button has been turned off. But I certainly can't do that.
That's the paid for thing, isn't it? That's when you finish this, and at the end of it, you start doing a paid for thing, right? Patreons or whatever, and then they get the real shit at the end.
The real shit. Love it.
So here's things that cropped up, right? You asked her some really good questions, and she had some really good answers, and she has done a lot, hasn't she? Like in such a short space of time, amazing. And I thought it was quite interesting when you asked her about does anything go wrong, and she said not really, because they spend so long rehearsing, whereas we would go, well, yeah, things go wrong all the time, but she's going, well, nothing really goes wrong, and then I remembered like stuff goes wrong with you, like in your act, like the cardboard box thing. Like, how many times have you been stabbed in that cardboard box?
Oh yeah, like it's, you know what, particularly at the moment when we're doing so many shows, like I'm not gonna lie, it's miserable in there actually, and Strange does an amazing job, and we've always had this agreement that, even if he does hit me, he didn't mean to. Well, I hope. So we just have to. You just have to go, hey, that stick there, by the way, that was in the wrong place, or that came back too far, and he'll go, oh, okay. He's very good at taking notes on it, and the next show it'll be perfect. We've got this little thing we've been trying to put in here in Canada, which is basically I get in the box, and the first thing I do is I put on the local sports team's jersey for the reveal when I come out.
Right.
And it's just basically like trying to put a shirt on in the dark, and we've been trying to come up with all sorts of like methods for it, so that it's quick to get on, but nothing's really worked. And so as a result of that, there's a real panic in there at the beginning, and Stranger's having to kill time on the outside, and it's a bloody mess some shows actually, but we're just trying to get through it. We've sort of come up with a bit of a method at the moment, but if you want to see what I'm going through, try and drop a t-shirt on the floor, sit down with your legs crossed, and try and put it on with your eyes closed. See if you can do it, because I can't.
Well, do you know the answer?
Go on.
Get Josephine to put the spears in, because then it'd never go wrong.
That's true. You know when she said how nothing goes wrong?
Yeah.
She is right. I mean, I saw that show in the West End all those years ago. 5 or 6 times I think I saw it. And how many illusions are in that show? 40 illusions, maybe more. Yep, never saw a single flash, never saw anything go wrong. Nothing. Like, it's amazing.
Amazing, but that's the other thing that she said about like surrounding herself with good people, right? So she's got a really good work ethic, hasn't she? So that idea that she's been brought up with people like Jonathan Goodwin, Hans Klock, those sort of people. Those are the people she's been working with, right? And so she's got their work ethic, where like you, like when you got into close up, you got it off me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why you're terrible.
That's right. And also, I remember when I first got into Close Up, and I was quite excited about it. I met you, and you were like, "Yeah, it's a bad idea." I was like, "What? I'm having a great time."
Yeah, I was going, you'll like it for a bit, and then you'll regret it. And I was right, wasn't I?
You're absolutely right. Do you know one of my best friends in the whole world, a guy called Jimmy? You know Jimmy.
Yeah.
He used to be a magician. He's not anymore. And I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, he said to me, "You might want to diversify a little bit what you're doing." And I said, "Why? I'm having a great time performing at weddings." And he said, "Yeah, you're not going to like it forever." And I was like, "Really?" He's absolutely right. So, yeah.
The other thing, can I just talk about this as well, is when she had a panic attack for the pressure.
Oh, yeah.
That was interesting. I did enjoy that because I completely get it. When I was doing Next Great Magician, I had several, not major panic attacks, but I had like little panic attacks just going, oh, what if this all goes wrong? What if they cut it to something that I don't like? Or, because you're at the mercy of the TV editors, right? What if they take out all the gags out and they weren't letting me do the jokes that I wanted to do on it in the first place, and I was getting pressure. But then it's only recently that, and I thought then I had a panic, but it was only recently I had a proper panic attack, and so now I actually know what a proper one is, so I could sort of relate to it. Although mine was different. Mine was at the end of a comedy gig that I was watching somebody else. I was watching this guy called Aziz Ansari, and the last 5 minutes I completely went white. I had to walk out, I had to go to the toilet, and I was shaking, and I didn't know what was going on. And afterwards I worked out it was a panic attack because he was talking about shoving a copper wire up his penis.
Oh, yeah, I think that would do the same to me.
Yeah, but I've never had that before.
That's crazy, isn't it? Do you know what? I was just listening to your interview. Just listening to what you were saying then. And you may have heard at the beginning of this episode, the opening little teaser is Matt talking about himself being depressed. And last week it was about Josephine having a panic attack. I listen out for those little things. And whenever anyone says they were depressed or, in hospital or something, I always go, there's my little teaser.
Right, yeah.
It's bad, isn't it? But there you go.
And the other big news is still no mug for Magic Week.
Ah, really? It is Christmas. Give him some time. Has he been in touch?
No, and do you know what? But I thought I could use this opportunity, right? Because you said come back next week. I thought, brilliant, right? What I'll do is I'll probably have the mug by then, and what I'll do is I'll ask for something else, and then we'll get the next thing, right? So I was going to start talking about that timeless trick. Where the ring goes in the watch, in the little gift thing. It's about 380 quid. I thought, right, I'll just give that a little mention, and I'll probably get someone of them. But I can't even get a mug.
You can't even get a mug. Also, just to let you know, I've been making this podcast for years. I think in that time I've had 3 free things. That's it.
What have you had?
Let me think now. Oh God, I'm going to forget something, aren't I? I remember Rory Adams sent me his book, which was absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Let me just remind myself what it was called. I remember putting it on the Instagram.
The Little Ideas book.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant little book. Do you follow the Magicians Podcast Instagram page?
I don't. Should I?
Yeah, of course you should. At the Magicians Podcast. Yeah, Only Ideas, your how-to guide to creating magic by Rory Adams. 100 plus ideas to get you started. Fantastic. I'll tell you who else actually gave me something free, which was not related to the podcast, was Danny Garcia. He came to Champions of Magic and met us all afterwards, and he gave us all his mint box trick, which is absolutely brilliant. I love that. I think that's about it.
Oh.
I'm sorry if I've forgotten something. If you've given me something free and you're listening to this and I haven't mentioned it, I'm very sorry.
Well, next week we can talk about the timeless trick that we get sent each. And by, how do you pronounce it? Heo Miranda. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I saw a magician post a trick arriving in the post from him. Very good packaging. That was my thoughts on that. What's that other trick that everyone's talking about at the minute? That Turner watch. Have you got one of those?
That is also Rory Adams, isn't it?
Is it also Rory?
That's also Rory.
Oh, yes, it is.
Well, now if he's got form for sending free stuff in the post, let's chat about the Turner watch. No, I'm not seeing it. Everyone's talking about it. Looks great, but no, not seen it in real life yet.
No, not seen it in real life either, but I'm sure we'll see it. Maybe at the session. Maybe
the session, Blackpool, all of them. Good. Right, it's Boxing Day. I've got to go to my mum's for food. So, Young, it's been a pleasure.
We're not going to just talk about what's coming up just now, before you go?
What's coming up?
This is Matt Edmondson episode, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Let's come and cut this bit out.
Yeah, I can cut this out. So this week...
But because I'm not listening to the podcast now, like, I just go, what's going on now? All I'm thinking about is food.
You're hungry, aren't you?
Yeah, I am,
yeah. No, so this is the Matt Edmondson episode. This is a great episode coming up, actually, because basically, if you've ever thought about trying to get on TV, wait till you hear the way this guy kind of got his foot in the door. It's fantastic, and obviously he's also got some great thoughts on this interview about where magic is going on television, he thinks, over the next couple of years. Obviously it's changing a lot already with Netflix, but he's kind of got an idea of where he thinks commissioners are going to want to take magic over the next couple of years, and it's quite an exciting episode. Do you know Matt?
Do you know, I've met him a couple of times. I saw him as a best man at a wedding, at Chris Cox's wedding, and I've got to say,
there's another mention for Cox.
Yeah, sorry. But do you know what? So Matt did an excellent best man speech, as you would imagine. But
he just assassinate his character.
First of all, it started off by slamming Cox, which was excellent. We all enjoyed that. Yeah, so that was great fun. So yeah, I met Matt a couple of times. I met him at a Magic convention once or twice, and met him there. Yeah, seems like a really nice guy, and I'm looking forward to it. So he tells you how to get on the telly?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, well, yeah.
Brilliant. Can't wait to listen.
This is a good one. Okay, thanks, Alan. I'll speak to you again next week.
Get Hudson back on the telly after this. That's it, right? I'm gonna listen to this and then get my TV show in January.
Look forward to speaking to you about it next week as to how you're going to do that. Happy Boxing Day.
Yeah, good. Yeah, you too. Right, cheers, young.
Bye bye. Matt Edmondson, welcome to the Magicians Podcast.
It's a delight to be here, finally.
Hey, listen, first of all, you can't have a better voice than me on this, so you got to...
I'm sorry, what can I do? This is, do you know what, sometimes
tone
people
it down a bit.
Say, oh, you talk like you're on the radio, and this is just my voice. This is just how I talk.
To be fair, we've just been talking about other stuff, and this is how you talk.
Imagine, though, if I did have a voice that I put on just for any time I'm recorded.
It's really interesting. So I don't know if I've mentioned this in the intro because I haven't done the intro yet, but basically we're at the Magic Circle, and you just walked in, and there's a corporate event going on here today, and people recognise your voice, don't they? And we're just downstairs, and
I think it did help that you came and introduced yourself to me as Radio 1's Matt Edmondson. I think otherwise they would not necessarily have known.
Oh, come on. Everybody knows your voice by now, right?
Normally if I walk into a room and introduce Newsbeat, people know pretty quickly.
They do know that. Yeah. Very good. So I've only ever done this once on the Magicians Podcast before. And I think it's a special episode.
Yes.
Because, you know, you're...
Because I'm not really a magician. That's why it's a special episode.
You're not really a magician. Basically, I somehow got to fill 50 minutes here.
If you're in it for the magic, maybe you skip to one of his previous ones.
So, my first attempt at filling time here, because we haven't got a lot of magic to talk about, is I bought you a gift.
Ah, this is exciting.
It's on the table there. I don't know how you even know.
Oh my goodness me.
I bought you a Ben's cookie.
Ah, I love a cookie. Now, what flavour have you gone for here?
There's 3 in there.
1 for me, 2 for you.
That's correct. So you get to choose. I like all 3.
Okay.
So we got a triple chocolate.
Oh, because you're doing another podcast record later, right?
Yeah. This is a first.
Okay, one's got raisins on it.
No, that's not raisins. That is white chocolate and cranberry.
Right, the cranberry is too similar to actual fruit for me. I'm going to go for
white chocolate.
I'm going to go for the double chocolate with the white chocolate.
That means triple chocolate.
Triple chocolate.
Yeah, You're going for that one?
I'm going to go for that one, yeah.
It's yours.
And yeah, I can tell you're annoyed because it is the best one.
It is the best one.
Should have bought 2 of those and 1 other.
That's for you, that. There's no charge for that.
That's very kind.
For you.
Thanks so much.
Just a thank you for doing the podcast.
So I appreciate that.
You're right, this is a 2-show day for me. I've never done this before. I'm doing 2 podcast recordings today.
Paul Zerdin later.
No, don't take that, because in case I put them out in a different order.
Paul Zerdin earlier.
Yeah. Paul Zerdin, yes, is recording with me a little bit later today. So it's a day, actually, of interesting people who are not really known as magicians, but all who started as magicians.
Just before you get into this segue which you're doing, are you going to ask Paul Zerdin to do voices? Because I often think that that's presumably the only reason anyone ever wants to spend time with him is because they're like, do the voice. Come on, let me see you talk without moving your lips. But also, it's a bit of a off question when he's come here, to talk to you on the podcast and be like, dance monkey.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. And I have been talking to my friends about shall I ask him to do the voices, and to be honest,
what conclusion have you come to?
I've never met him before, so I'm going to see how we get on. See how he deals
Ask him
with
to do
the
the
free...
whole podcast without moving his lips. And if he does, shut it down.
Also, I'll get a gauge when I give him the free cookie and see whether he reacts as well as you just did.
It's a really good technique, actually, the free gift at the start of an interview.
Do you
If he
think?
warms people up, I'm going to steal that.
That's good, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking now you're going to be more open, you're going to tell me how much you get paid.
All of that sort of stuff. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And that's all going to come a bit later on.
I will tell you how much I get paid, but only in the metric of cookies.
That's brilliant. So normally, if I ask a magician on the Magicians podcast, how do you get into magic, people groan because they go, oh. But actually, this is an interesting bit with you because we met at the Young Magicians Club, didn't we?
We did.
Many years ago. But tell us the start at the beginning then, because you're not known as a magician now, but I remember hanging around with you a couple of years ago, and you've always got a deck of cards in your hand and stuff like that. So how did it start for you?
So yes, hi magicians. I am a magician, but not one that does any performing really, other than under duress at barbecues. I got into magic probably. I mean, as a kid, obviously had the magic sets, etc., etc. You know that story. Everyone had a bit of a bit of magic going on. Didn't really fully understand how it worked. I remember having the Paul Daniels magic set and trying to make a cigarette disappear. It was a different time, Richard. It was like marketed at 6-year-olds. Have a vanishing cigarette, ideal. So I did that for a bit, and then it really hit me quite hard. I don't know, I've got a very bad autobiographical memory, which might make your job challenging today, but it will have been when the first David Blaine special was on TV, on Channel 4, and I watched it with my dad, and it had a sort of spellbinding effect on me, to the point where there are certain moments in life where you're like, right, I've just sampled a thing, and that now is all I'm interested in. And that's happened to me with various things throughout my life. And one of the first was magic. And I saw it and I thought, I've never seen anyone do any magic like this before. I didn't know that close-up magic existed. I'd only ever seen kind of Saturday night shiny floor telly stuff. And we had a deck of cards in our house, and he was doing things with a deck of cards that I couldn't explain. And so I could very quickly go and try and problem solve. Well, he took a card and he put it in the middle and it came to the top. Then he bent it and he put it in the middle and it came to the top with a bend on it. So that trick, I remember the ambitious card, and I remember watching him levitate. And I remember my dad and I trying to figure the levitation out. Like, how could he have done it? And from that day... Well, the next day, my sister had a kind of 101 things to do on a rainy day type book, which had a section on card tricks. And I went and tried to learn some card tricks, and I showed them to people at school, and I got a good response. So I went to the school library, and I got a book out from there. And in the back of that book, it said, "If you like magic, here are some things you should have a look at." And I think it listed Davenport's and International Magic and the Young Magicians Club. And I obviously sent off, and then started getting into going along to all the meetings. The first thing I went to was the Reading Junior Day.
The best day of the year.
Mate, it was like I'd entered Aladdin's Cave of Wonders.
It was the best day. Did you go to Reading Bluecoat School? That's where it used to be. It was in a school.
Oh, I don't know where it was.
Right.
It probably was a school because it was pretty rubbish surroundings. But for me, it was the most amazing thing. Because suddenly there are other kids doing magic there. There are grown-ups doing something. I mean, I bought everything. Anyone show me anything, I bought it. On that day, I bought my first ever paddle. I'd never seen a paddle move before. And I remember just thinking, this is magic. What I'm seeing here is magic. So I took that and practiced that. Billy McComb did a lecture there, which was amazing. And we went to the lecture. I didn't know what a lecture was. And they said, you go in and sit down and you're going to see a magic performance. And he performed it, and I thought, I'm never going to work out how any of this stuff is done. And then he explained everything.
Amazing.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I've gone into this place where they're giving me all the secrets. And that was the first day I met Anthony Owen. And
was it? He's going to be a big part of this podcast. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I met Anthony, and so my sort of twin loves as a kid were Telly, and I was obsessed with presentation on TV. So the bits between shows. So not necessarily wanting to present Blue Peter, but the person who says, "Here's Blue Peter." That was Newsround. I was obsessed with that. And I found out that Anthony, on that day, worked in TV, and he'll probably rue the day that he gave a 13 or 14-year-old his email then, because I pestered him relentlessly for pretty much the rest of my life.
This is amazing. So what I'm really interested to know, because I know James Fridman is part of your story a little bit later on as well. And you did gigs and stuff, so this wasn't just a hobby as a kid and then you went into telly like people most think. There was a period of time where you were doing gigs. So I'm interested to know, because no one does know, and I don't know this, is how close did it get to being a career for you?
I loved it, and I loved performing, and I also really liked earning some money. And so when the opportunity came up to do gigs, I do like little shows and things, but I met James. Anthony took me to a Monday Night Magic that he and John Lenihan used to put on. This is when I was staying with him and doing some work on some of the stuff that he was making on telly. And he was like, I've got to go to this thing. I was just like loitering around. He said, we're going to do the thing Monday Night Magic, and I went. And he said, in the interval, if you want to do some close-up, you're more than welcome to go and do some close-up. So I did. And I performed for James. And James said, the most James Fridman statement ever.
Here we go.
James went, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 15 or 14 or whatever I was. He goes, when you're 17, 18, call me up and I'm going to get you a job. I was like, okay. And at the time, I just naively thought, well, that's how the world works. So when I was 17 or 18, maybe even earlier, I phoned James and said, hi, you said you'd give me a job. And he was like, great, come and do some gigs. So I used to go out and do gigs all the time. And I gigged with him and Martin Rowland and Alexis Conran. And, we went all over the world, all over the place. Went to Cannes. He flew me out to Cannes to do a gig at a casino, which I wasn't old enough to go into as a punter, but was able to go and do a gig in there. I used to gig all the time for James.
Do you know what? We can have a nice little segue here, because actually this is genuinely an amazing thing. James does have a very generous side to him. In fact, there's a young magician going through the Young Magicians Club right now called Theo, and 3 or 4 years ago when the International Magic Day was happening, James had some front row tickets and went and found Theo in the back row and brought him down to the front row, and then got chatting to him and has been helping him ever since. And Theo is now entering the junior day competitions here and things like that. So James is really generous with
He's great. James has got a remarkable energy about him, sort of unlike anyone I've ever met before. And actually, James invited me to kind of do a little bit of almost work experience at his magic management or dynamic effects or whatever it was at the time. And I learned so much from just observing him about he will say yes to things and then work out how he can accomplish them rather than worry about whether or not he can pull it off. There's never any worry there. He thinks, can you provide this service? Well, yes, of course I can. It's going to cost this much money, and then he'll go and work out how to do it. And I think that kind of level of chutzpah to be like, yeah, whatever it is, whatever comes in, we are the people for the job, is a really useful skill set. And in terms of other things that I've done where I've had to sell stuff, I think I've learned a lot from the James Fridman way of managing.
So this is interesting. This is amazing. I didn't even know you were doing gigs in Cannes and things like this. So why then did it not become a career? You're just in love with Telly at the same time? Was it very equal?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was equal. I'd say that the Telly for me, it was unquestionably what I was going to go and do, or what I wanted to go and do. And I never really considered that it wasn't something I was going to do. And it was very specifically, I wanted to do the links between shows on CBBC. That was, I think I decided probably when I was 8 years old, and that was it. I decided it, that was what was happening. And remarkably, I got to do that job. I did it for a couple of years. And so everything in my life led towards that. And magic, I guess, was the only thing at that time that I'd ever discovered that made me feel even remotely as excited. And I think I liked the fact that it gave me an excuse to perform, that it gave me a... Hello.
That's the lift going past the wall that we're sat next to.
Wow, okay.
There's a lift just behind this mirror. And so that you thought we were in an earthquake.
I leant on the table and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know my own strength. So, I can't remember. What was I saying, Richard?
You were saying how you always wanted to go into...
Oh yeah, I always wanted to go into Telly.
Magic was the only thing that gave you the similar kind of excitement.
Similar sort of feeling of getting lost in something. I think in terms of my headspace, almost my happiest time, and this is a terrible blight on my personality, but my happiest times are when I'm totally engrossed in something that isn't what's going on in the world. I spend a lot of time in my own head, thinking of ideas, working stuff out, problem solving, whatever it is. And magic is such a lovely space for my brain to go to. Either the repetitive nature of practicing something until you can do it well, or trying to solve a problem and trying to retrofit your tools that you have at your disposal to create some sort of outcome. That is a process. Those two things I find are the sort of happiest states of my brain to be in, no matter what I'm doing. So magic, I think, was very useful for that. But yeah, the opportunity to get to present and get to go out and perform, and also just from a sort of connections perspective, I found it very useful as a conversation starter. It's a interesting thing to have about you when you go and meet someone for a meeting. It's like like actors put horse riding or whatever on their CV as a thing they can do. As a presenter, I thought magic would be a useful tool. But even at that young age, there were people who were doing magic and presenting, and I thought, I will never be that person. I don't want to be known as a magician. I want to be known as a presenter, and the magic will be a thing that is sort of
What age are you when you made that decision? You just said
it never even occurred to me that I wanted to be a TV magician.
Really?
Never was on the cards. Excuse the pun. All I wanted to do was be a CBBC presenter. That was it.
Wow. Well, because I remember you saying something to me once. We'll segue a little bit here, but I remember you saying that one of the reasons why you've managed to get so much TV stuff made over the years is you don't sit thinking of ideas for yourself. You just sit trying to think of good ideas.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit, that's okay. Or it's not for you. I find that interesting because most magicians, especially when it comes to TV, they're constantly sat around trying to think of ideas for themselves, right?
Yeah, and I can understand why, if you want to perform on telly, I could understand why you'd want to do that. I think what gives me, with magic particularly, what gives me the freedom is that I don't want to do magic on telly. But I still love magic and I love telly, and part of my job is coming up with TV shows. So it's inevitable that I would come to think within the magic space, but never with a view to wanting to perform it. And so that is slightly freeing because you can go, okay, well, who are the best people, or who's available to be cast in this, or who haven't I worked with, or who's interesting. And it also allows me to feed my my desire to do magic-y things by getting to sit in a writer's room with other magicians and pitch ideas or pitch methods or whatever it might be, and get to do a slightly more, consultation is probably too strong a word, but getting to do a little bit of the backroom work on it, which I enjoy. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to other telly stuff, I think the idea is the idea, and the thing that can sometimes cloud it is trying to put yourself into it. And I think that I want to, in the TV production side of stuff, which is a thing that I've started to get into the last few years, I don't want to be trapped in this thing of, whenever I'm going to have a meeting with someone, them thinking, he's just coming in here with an idea for himself. But also, I want to make ideas for Channel 4 and ITV and BBC Two and Sky and YouTube, and I might not be the right person to be on. I mean, I'm not the right person to be on all of those channels and all of those projects. So it's a slightly crazy idea just to be sat around thinking, well, the only ideas I can come up with are ones for me. Frustratingly for me, most of the ideas I come up with are better suited to other people.
I'm interested, did that thought process come from your time? You said you pestered Anthony for many, many years, and obviously so you got to see then the process of the way that magic shows are put together and cast, I assume, if you helped out with various... Is that where that thought process came from?
Not really. I mean, I learnt loads from Anthony, and I had, honestly, the happiest time of my life. If I was on my deathbed and someone said, when were you happiest in life? It would be the 2 weeks of work experience that I did with Anthony at very early days Objective, working on, it would have been Darren's second mind control special, and maybe a bit of the Quick Trick Show, and actually the genesis of Monkey Magic. And I was sort of around in London, so I'm from Portsmouth, so I came to London, so I had the independence of being away from home. I was staying on the sofa of my uncle, working on magic stuff every day with some of the most not only talented magic minds but TV minds, just absorbing everything like a sponge. So I think that I learned lots from Anthony. When it comes to sort of the idea generation stuff, I don't know where that comes from. I like format in everything, really. So I don't think I'd be able to necessarily write a drama unless it was like a high concept formatted thing. But the idea of putting a little jigsaw together of beats of a thing, be it a show or a magic trick within a show or a board game or whatever it might be, quite good at doing those things. And one of the elements of those things is that you would need magicians, so the casting would come from that. So I don't know that was necessarily something that I picked up around that time. Although I do remember seeing Pete Furman's casting VHS come into the office, and Ant and I watched it together.
Wow.
And we both went, I mean, I had no authority to be saying this, but I was like, oh, he's pretty good. I was probably about 13. And Anthony was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to see this guy," and it was a great tape.
That's fair. I remember hearing the story in another episode of Barry and Stewart's tape coming in.
I remember seeing their tape as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it was Andrew O'Connor talked about just how it was a really interesting, just three or 4 minutes. And it was like, let's get these guys in and find out a bit more about them. So you pestered Anthony for a long time.
Yeah, to probably in a way that was at that age. 40, well, anywhere between 40 and 20, I think you don't really understand quite how the world functions. And you think, well, why can't what I want happen? And you don't really have any sense of shame or any sense of being a nuisance. And so I got Anthony's email and I
How bad did it get?
It's no exaggeration to say that I think I probably emailed him every day for a year. And he probably said, I don't think we can make this work experience thing happen. Because they'd said at school, you're going to go and do work experience. And I knew it was coming because I had friends in the year above who'd done it. And they'd give you this depressing catalogue of local businesses. And I was just like, none of this is relevant to me. I'm not going to go and work at a print shop. I'm not even going to work at a local newspaper. It's not relevant to what I'm doing. The only thing that's relevant to me is to go and work in television. So I just needed an in, but I didn't know anyone who worked in telly. And then I met Anthony at that junior day. So I just pestered him every single day until it became easier for him to just say, fine, come up and do the work experience for 2 weeks, than it was just to fend off emails every single day. And it was great.
You've got this really interesting perspective, though, that, like you just mentioned, and I heard this in my research, that you were there during the making of Darren's second series, second special, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like, what was he like around that time? If you were lucky enough to be there on the set, for example, or in the room when it was all being written, like, how involved was he? Were other people still taking the lead at that point? Or was he already aware of what he wanted it to be himself?
I mean, I did not spend a lot of one-on-one time with Darren, as you can imagine, because I was like the lowest rung away from where he was. I do remember him knowing that I was a magician and being incredibly lovely and charming. I remember he and Andy working together, pretty much locked in a room together. And they would get up to all sorts of mischief. I remember Andy at one point, I sort of went in to take a tea order or something, and Andy was riding around on a scooter, just in his underwear, in circles as they were trying to bash out some sort of brainstorm. So on the creative side, I didn't really get to see all that much going on, save the occasional time I'd go into a room and overhear them talking about something. From the actual filming perspective, man, I learnt so much about how to make a TV magic show.
Do you mean you learnt about how to have a mic problem?
I don't recall any mic problems at all on that Darren show.
Interesting. Is that the only magic show you've ever worked on that has not had a mic problem?
I think so. Yes.
Let's talk about this, because I mean, we make jokes about it, but what do you think of this stuff? Like, where it's like, well, we got limited time and limited budget, and we could do it for real, or we could just say we got a mic problem and take the thing off where we need it to go. And
I think it is a grey area, and I can understand why some people get frustrated by it. I think as long as you're not outright doing a thing that could not be achieved in real life, or at least the memory of that thing happening could not be achieved in real life. If I asked you, if you do a thing and you get someone to write something down and then you later tell them what it is, you're going to try every trick you can to make them think that you didn't ask them to write it down, to misremember that. If I'm doing Out of This World and I get you to shuffle the cards, I'm going to keep repeating to you, you shuffle these cards. Now, I might have unshuffled them at some point, but I'm going to try and make you misremember that stuff. And the thing with telly is that you can't really fool a thing that is recorded to tape or recorded digitally, particularly in the age of YouTube. So if someone writes something down and then later on someone says, oh, you wrote this thing, oh, this is what you were thinking of and wrote it down, it is much easier to join the dots, and you don't have the same power of psychological manipulation that you would have in a gig, of natural time, people's reactions, all the rest, them forgetting stuff, you trying to get them to reframe it in their memory as something slightly different to what happened. You don't have that luxury with telly. So I don't feel as bad about the notion that some pre-show took place. Now, if I'm being totally honest about it, we say, well, now, full disclosure, before the show, I came and asked you to pick something out of this bag.
Pre-show's a bit different, though, to when, where it's like, where summer is taken away and taken somewhere and
put inside a fish, or do you know what I mean? Put inside, where it's like you go, oh, no, you wouldn't have been able to do that in. Where you've used the "we've got a mic problem" as a distraction.
Sure, as a moment of misdirection in which to reset.
And to eliminate time in the edit as well.
Yes.
Which is what it's often used
What
for.
you have to do, I personally don't have a problem. I know the trick you're thinking of in Killer Magic, right?
I've seen it used 4 or 5 times. In fact, you and I made something where we used it. It was never shown on TV, but you remember.
Yeah.
We're using the same, we got a mic problem and we ran something off down the street.
Yeah. So my question is, was the reaction great? Did the people in it experience a moment of magic that was real, and did the trick look good, and did the edit work better for all that stuff happening?
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You sound like a dodgy market stall trader, which is an interesting segue.
Yes.
Talk to me about your time selling Sven decks.
Yeah. So about the same time as coming up, so I moved to London after doing my work experience with Anthony. And I phoned James and said, you said you'd give me a job, can I have a job? And I did a bit of magic with him, so I was doing gigs, and I went and worked for Marvin for 4 days. And I thought, it's great, but why am I working for no money when I can go and do all these gigs instead? So I put my attention into that. And then probably about 3 months after, I started on the CBBC, and I did that job for 2 years, and then they let me go. And I thought, right, what do I do now?
This is interesting. So talk to me. What they just said.
They said, we're not renewing your contract.
So you had an annual contract?
I was on a year's contract. So I did a year, and they signed me up for another year. And there's a management change, and the guy basically said, we're not going to renew your contract. And I was like, okay, interesting.
How old are you at this time, sorry?
20.
Right.
So I started my dream job at 18. And I'd actually realised in that 2 years that whilst it was a brilliant training ground, I was a different person to the person who decided that was the job they wanted to do. I decided that when I was 8. And when I got there, actually what I wanted to be doing was presenting something that was like T4 or something that was like for younger people, for young teenagers rather than for kids. And but it was still a job on telly, and I loved it, and it's what I wanted to do. And so when it ended, I thought something else would come up. For 6 months, I basically did nothing.
Did you worry you were Macaulay Culkin?
Absolutely.
You peaked at 18.
I definitely did. And I, for about 6 months, did nothing and just sort of like had lots of meetings and tried to convince people I wasn't just a kids' TV presenter.
So you had the life of a professional full-time close-up magician.
Yeah. I literally did nothing, and I definitely fell into a depression. Like I was in a bad place because...
You were living in London?
I was living in London, yeah. I was 20... didn't have a job, had saved some money from presenting CBBC, and that money slowly ran out over the course of 6 months to the point where I had no money left.
You don't have to give me figures, but is that good money?
CBBC?
CBBC?
No.
It's not? Okay,
no.
That's interesting.
I mean, it was good for me as an 18-year-old and my first job who'd never earned any money before, but in the wider scheme of society, no.
Okay.
It wasn't great money. But I don't really spend any money, so I'd saved a lot. I'd saved almost everything I had been paid, I'd saved. So I was able to keep myself going for about 6 months, but the money dried up, and I was like, well, I don't want to go and get another proper job, a real job, because I'm pretty good. This Telly thing will work out, of course it will. Still very optimistic. Or maybe not optimistic, but sort of didn't really know what else I could do. And I thought, okay, I need some money, what shall I do? And the only other job I'd had, other than doing magic, and I didn't want to go back to being a full-time magician, because I was like, well, that's just going to get in the way when I go back to doing telly. I need something just to fill that space. I thought, okay, the only other job I've had was demming in Marvin's 4 days, and I did that same job at a joke shop in Portsmouth when I was 12 or 13. And I used to sell a lot of cards there. So I thought, well, I live in Greenwich, we've got an arts and crafts market, why don't I just get some Sven decks and see how it goes in Greenwich Market? And boy, did it go well.
Did it?
Oh my God. I've almost not had a job that's paid as well since.
You are kidding.
Richard, I used to sell so many cards, I can't begin to tell you. I sold so many decks of Sven cards. I bought them for 33p a deck, sold them for £6.50.
He must have been coming from China.
They were coming. Yeah, someone was marking them up to me. They were coming from like a wholesaler in the UK.
Wow. What year was this?
This was, oh God, again, bad autobiographical memory, but I was 20 and I'm now 32, so 12 years ago.
So it's 2006.
Yeah, and I sold so many Sven decks. I can't begin to tell you.
That was on the market stall was Sven decks.
That was it. So when I started, it was all right. I need a variety here. I need Sven decks. I bought you know those little things that are basically like dental dams that you push a coin through.
Yes.
Bought some of those, and I bought some dynamic coins. But the dynamic coins cost me more money. They were about £4 to buy, and then you would sell them for £10. So your margin was kind of the same as with the Sven deck, but your cash flow was affected. You're basically there's a big outlay on, if I wanted to buy 100 dynamic coins, it's going to cost me 400 quid. Yes, I'm going to turn that into whatever the equivalent is. I can't do that maths, but I'll turn it into something bigger later. But my initial spend wasn't good. And what I realised was that if I had other things for sale, people would say, that card trick's great. What's this one? And then you'd have to dem twice. And then they maybe wouldn't buy it. So I realised if I just did one product, they would have to buy that product.
Very smart.
And I also had a system whereby, so I had to pay my a stall charge.
How much was the stall?
£45 a day, and I paid it through tips because what I realised was I was pulling in a crowd, and of that crowd, I reckon I could get about anywhere between 30 and 50% to buy the deck of cards. But the other people were just there because they'd seen other people watching stuff. So my line was, if you want to take this and do this for your friends and family, you can buy this right now. I'll set it up for you and I'll show you how it works. However, if you've just enjoyed watching the show, feel free to put whatever you think it's worth into the pot in front of you. So I was basically...
The free fringe comes to Greenwich.
Yeah, I was busking and demming at the same time. So I used to make my rent and more in tips because people felt guilty for having watched the thing, and they'd watched me do a little show. And then I'd sell the others, and then a minute later a new group would come in. I'd do the same thing over and over again. And it got to the point where I want to clarify, I did later declare all of this, but at the time I didn't know where my life was going. And so I thought, right, well, I'm going to just keep all this cash in a hollowed out dictionary, which I made literally with a scalpel and a dictionary in my room. And I lived like a drug dealer. I had rolls of £1,000 notes stacked up in this book. And then I eventually got a job back in doing what I wanted to do. And I was like, right, I'm too much of a wuss here. I can't not declare this. So I declared it at the end of that year. I only did it for about 9 months. But I made more money in that 9 months than I've made at almost anything else I've ever done. For the time that I worked 2 days a week. And I probably earned 3 times what I was making at CBBC.
Do you know, you got me thinking here. You were saying all this. That Marvin guy, must have a lot of money, mustn't he?
He's probably got a fair few quid. And he doesn't even have to turn up and dem it himself. What I would say is if you're a young magician and you're looking to earn some money and you've got a market stall near you, go and do that, because if you choose to, you don't ever have to get an actual job.
That is an amazing story. In fact, do you know what? I'm not even joking. I'm thinking about doing it myself.
Yeah. I actually thought about keeping the pitch on and finding someone else to do it. And I did occasionally go on holiday and I'd find another person to do it. But I think there is a certain hunger when it's your own venture that cannot be replicated when you have someone else in who's just getting a cut of it.
Whether you're new to magic or a seasoned professional, Alakazam Magic are here to help. Alakazam have been supplying magic to magicians for well over 20 years. Not only do we carry all the latest and greatest magic tricks, books and DVDs, but we also manufacture one of the finest ranges of magic tricks in the world. The Alakazam name is synonymous with great customer service, educated advice and honesty. So if you're shopping for new magic, make sure you check out our website, www.alakazam.co.uk, or pay a visit to our fully stocked shop.
Gigi-O, free for 30 days. Be a pro, get Gigi-O.
John Allen told me it has revolutionised the way he runs his business. He's talking about Gigio, of course. Top professional magicians love using Gigio to manage their bookings and admin. It's an easy-to-use web-based software that takes care of your inquiries, contracts, invoices, payments and reports. You can generate professional PDF contracts in seconds and allow your clients to agree them online quickly and conveniently. It will even automatically update the diary on your phone. Read what other magicians say about it and take a free 30-day trial at getgigio.com. Gigio is spelled Giggio.
The Magicians Podcast, brought to you in association with the Magic Circle, the world's premier magical society. Are you ready to join the world's most exclusive magic club? Visit themagiccircle.co.uk to find out more.
So you said then you go back into telly. So what did you go back into at that point?
So there was a website called Holy Moly, which at the time it was sort of like the British TMZ, which is like a big celebrity gossip entertainment site, and it had a real attitude about it. It was quite acerbic and quite kind of it sort of had disdain for the world of celebrity, and it used to run as a website, and I made this little showreel thing for Channel 4. Channel 4 had a show called Pop World, and they never used it. Their Pop World got cancelled before I had a chance to kind of do anything with it. And this I put it on YouTube, this tape of me going around doing a thing about pop music, and it fell into the hands of a guy called Peter Robinson, who runs a website called Pop Justice, who said, I like this thing that you've done. I don't know what use I would have for it, but we should meet up because I like the tone of what you're doing. And I met him, and he said, oh, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd love to do I'd love to work with someone like Holy Moly. And he said, oh, that's my business partner, the guy who runs Holy Moly. I didn't know this at the time. So he introduced me to a guy called Jamie East, who is now also a radio DJ, works for Virgin and talk radio and all sorts of things. But at the time, he just was this bloke who ran this website. And he came in and said, oh, yeah, we're thinking about doing some video stuff. Go and make me what you think we should be doing. He said, can you edit? And I said, yeah, of course. James Fridman.
There you go.
Couldn't edit.
Complete lie.
I said, yeah, I can do the whole thing. I can do all of it. I can film it. I can be in it. I can edit it. I can write the scripts. I'd never done any of that stuff. All I'd ever done was present. But I knew within me that I could figure it out. And so I went off and I made this thing, and I sat at an edit for God knows how long trying to figure out how to edit. But you know what? I got there. I edited it. It took me about 2 weeks to edit something that was about a minute and a half long. And I delivered it to Jamie, and he put it on his desk. And he just sort of left it there. And knowing Jamie as I know him now, I know that would have sat there on this DVD for months, and he would never have got round to doing anything with it. And as I went to leave the building, leave the office, he got a call through from MTV, and they said, we've got an interview with Kerry Katona this evening. Have you got anyone you want to send to interview? And he was like, we got no one. I'm going home. He had like a parents' evening with his kids. He's like, no one's around. And he was like, hang on, mate, what are you doing tonight? And I said, oh, I'm not doing anything. He said, right, take a camera, go and interview Kerry Katona. So I did. I went and interviewed her, and it was I feel quite bad about it in retrospect, but it was in Kerry's more turbulent times, when she was sort of off her face on a variety of narcotics and having a difficult time. And MTV capitalised by doing a reality show, and I went and we just had a bonkers chat together, and it was shot on one camera. And it went kind of like early days viral, kind of before things went viral.
Because she was off her face.
Because it was just a really funny interview. It's just so weird. I'm sort of like relentless and belligerent with my line of questioning, and like just looking for the joke everywhere. And she's kind of somehow warmed to me, and it's just like on the journey together. And that interview kind of changed my life. The next day he was like, great, that's what you're going to do now. You're going to go out and interview people. It's going to be really funny. And so that's what I did. I set off doing interviews. And then because Holy Moly was the sort of the antithesis of CBBC, it was this kind of young, cool, online, acerbic brand. Suddenly then the TV companies would see that stuff and say, oh, we need someone to present something, a pop show for Channel 4, or we need someone to present on T4, or whatever it might be. And it kind of all came off the back of doing that thing on Holy Moly.
So how then do you end up at the BBC? Because I long time ago, I used to date a girl who worked at the BBC.
Yeah.
One thing I know is it's very difficult to become an employee of the BBC, isn't it? Are you an employee of the BBC?
I'm not an employee of the BBC.
They don't give these things out easy.
No. If you work there in production for a number of years, you get to become staff, I think. And I don't know if that's still the same now. I'm on a sort of freelance contract. Recently, anyone who loves their tax legislations will know that a thing called IR35 has come in, which is basically the government suggesting that some people who've been paid through service companies, which is sort of how it used to be if you were a freelancer, how it used to be done. They're saying, no, you're kind of employed. So it has changed slightly, but I'm technically not an employee of the BBC.
I see.
Yeah.
So how do you end up back at the BBC anyway? Or,
So through the Holy Moly stuff, two things happen at once. One is that someone at T4 sees what I'm doing. Actually, not at T4. It's a sort of an independent production company who's making a show for T4. Sees me doing these interviews and says, "We like that. Can you come and do that, but with pop stars for this thing we've got called Pocket TV, which is going to go out branded by Sony on YouTube and then later on Channel 4." And someone from Radio 1 is seeing all the stuff I'm doing for Holy Moly and says, "This guy's interesting. We should get him in." So I get a call from my agent at the time. He's like, "Oh, Radio 1 want to meet you." And I honestly thought, why? What have I possibly got to offer them? I have no background in radio, had no real desire to do radio, didn't know what I was up to. And they said, "Oh, come for a meeting." And I went in and I just assumed that I would never end up doing anything for Radio 1. So I listened to the radio that week, and ahead of this meeting went in with people and had meetings with people who are now my bosses. And I was just like, I've listened to some of the stuff you're doing, and I think I could probably do it a bit better than how it's currently being done.
Wow.
And I would dread to see footage back of that meeting that took place. But I sort of didn't know who these people were or what was going on. I was just like, I think I could do something good here. And at this stage of my life, I was the most control freaky I've ever been, which for anyone that knows me will go, "Oh my God, he must have been awful." Because at Holy Moly, I had total autonomy. I was writing, editing, producing, lighting, everything myself. I was just delivering a product that I wanted to deliver.
Just like this podcast.
Exactly like this. I didn't even have to have Gigio jingles interfering with my work.
Someone to pay the petrol to get here.
That's true. So I came into Radio 1 and they said, "Make a tape of what you want to do." And they gave me a producer who was great at sort of teaching the technical stuff, but they were really trying to get me to do things their way. And I said, "No, I'm doing this, this and this. It's being cut like this. This is how it's happening. This is the tape I'm delivering. And if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, it's on me." And we delivered this tape and they said, "Great, come and work for us." And it started out as me doing a little bit of like showbiz news on Fern Cotton's show. And that's what they told me I was being signed up for. But in the press release they said, "Oh, Matt will also be covering other shows." I thought, oh, they haven't actually mentioned that to me. And then about a month into me doing it, Sarah Cox went on maternity leave and they said, "You're taking over our show."
It was the weekend slot, wasn't it?
Yeah, on a Sunday, yeah.
Yes.
And I was terrible at it for about 3 years.
Well, this is what's quite interesting. So I spoke to your good friend and colleague, Chris Cox.
Let's say friend.
Not
good friend.
Okay. So
no, I adore him. I was the best man at his wedding.
I know you were. So those who don't know, yeah, Matt and Chris have been friends. Did you meet at Radio 1? Is that what you met?
Yeah, I met at Radio 1, and I didn't really know anything about Chris before that. Other than I'd been to the Edinburgh TV Festival, and at the start of the TV Festival, they sort of have a pastiche or a version of a popular show that's staffed by people within the TV and radio industry that come and do it. So instead of doing, Britain's Got Talent, they'll do Edinburgh's Got Talent. And they said, "Oh, from Radio 1, we have mind reader Chris Cox." And I'd heard of him because I'd read Magic Week and he'd always, been feeding them stories about himself. And I saw him at Edinburgh and I thought, man, this guy's terrible. He did a bit on stage and it wasn't good. And I've told him this. He knows this.
This is the opening bit.
Yeah.
So definitely.
This was a long time ago. And then when I met him at Radio 1, he'd been away. He'd been like off he'd taken a sabbatical. He came back and I never met the guy before. And they were like, "Oh, Matt, you like magic. This guy likes magic." And they sort of put us together.
Ah, I see.
And then I realised that I'd found my other soulmate.
Well, one of the things Chris asked me I spoke to Chris ahead of this interview to get some gossip on you, basically.
It must be very hard because he's currently in international waters.
Is he really?
Yes.
I wouldn't have known that.
No. He very rarely tweets about it. He's a closed book when it comes to what he's up to.
Yeah. Also, never sure what part of the plane he flies in either.
He doesn't like to say. He doesn't like to say.
Unbelievable. He said to me to ask you about the process that you went through at Radio 1 because you did have to adapt there. So can you talk to us a bit about that, how you did over a few years? Because you just said it yourself, you weren't great at the beginning.
So I arrived as a control freak and who thought they knew how to do everything. And when it came to telly, I had a real instinct that I knew what I was up to. I felt like the grammar of telly, however telly was to be made, I kind of knew it intuitively. I knew when to cut something. I knew how long a pause to leave. I knew the amount of time it took me to say a sentence so that I could hit news round bang on time. And I came to radio and thought, it's going to be the same, but there's no cameras. It's even easier. And I had the exact opposite experience. I arrived, felt like a fraud, felt totally out of my depth, felt deeply uncool, felt like it's like I'd been given the keys to a fighter jet and a few days to learn it, and I didn't know how to fly it, but I was going on my first solo flight anyway. And so I felt that any time I could totally crash and burn, and I'm sure that I did crash and burn. I'm sure that there were links where I would do or say something that probably was imperceptible to the audience listening because they've only got half their mind on it. But to me, it would stay with me for days, maybe weeks after. Something would go wrong and it would stay with me. And I don't know if people, when they start doing magic gigs when they first start doing that and something goes wrong, they drop their pack of cards or whatever it might be that doesn't quite, they can't find their load or whatever it might be, and you beat yourself up over it. And I had 3 years of beating myself up over not being good at radio, and I did feel like there's no other word for it other than a fraud. I had proper imposter syndrome. And so I covered at the weekends, and it's no exaggeration to say that I found it really, really difficult. Like I wasn't happy as a person doing that stuff. I felt really honoured to have the job, but I felt like it was a terrible error, like a terrible series of events that had led me to doing something that I wasn't qualified to do. And then Radio 1 said, okay, Sarah's back from maternity leave. We're going to give you this show on a Wednesday night. And I sort of hid behind the idea that this show could be a show that satirised radio and satirised the production of radio. So it was a sort of radio show that was like a spoof radio show.
Okay.
And it was first and foremost a comedy show, and it got a real cult following and people really liked it. But sort of deep down, I think I was hiding behind the fact that I could point out all of the things about radio
without pointing at yourself.
Without pointing at myself, yeah. And then after a while, you got to a point where actually you go, I feel a bit more confident with what I'm doing now, and actually I don't want to be subverting this. I just want to be doing it, and I want to be doing it well. And I had a conversation with the bosses, and they said, okay, we'll see if any schedule changes come up. And then they said, right, Sarah and Vernon are moving on Saturday and Sunday. We want you to come and do that show. And I came in and did that show, and I would say even for the first year of doing that, I was unsteady on my feet. And then somehow something clicked, and I went from being someone that would have a sort of sense of like runny poo, nervous, like dread before going on the radio, to someone who's just like, oh, I feel totally comfortable here now. I feel as comfortable on the radio as I do here with you now or anywhere else doing any other thing. And it just is flight time. It's just practice. It's just doing something over and over and over and getting good at something and honing it.
It's just like being a performer in anything,
yeah.
Then, right? Like stage time, flight time,
yeah,
air time, whatever you want to call it.
So there just came a day, and I couldn't, I can't pinpoint it to like, oh, it was then. But I just suddenly was like, oh, I'm good at this now. This is what I do. I know what I'm doing. I feel totally relaxed. I feel like this, like your iPhone's an extension of your hand. I feel like that desk, that studio, is an extension of me. I know exactly what I want. I understand the grammar of how radio works. I know how to do a link. I know how to tell a story in a short way. I know how to fill time correctly. And it just sort of clicked into place. And now I love radio probably more than anything else.
That was going to be my next question. Do you now love it more than television?
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine loving anything as much as telly. And telly still does have a certain... radio's like my wife, but telly's like a sort of seductive thing where you're like, oh, the feel of that, the ability to go and do it gives me a kick like nothing else. Getting to go and do a bit of live telly is that it's still the thing that for me is, sadly, the happiest I am ever is when I'm live on television and I'm in charge of it. So nothing can quite compete with that. But as a sort of overarching view, I prefer radio.
I was going to ask this because you just talked about TV that you're in charge of. You did a very, very high-profile gig a couple of years ago. Maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, to me it appears as an outsider as the highest profile thing you've done, which was when you did Extra Factor on ITV2. But you're not in charge of that, are you? Is that fair to say?
When you're on... Oh, not in charge as in terms of being the overall boss of it.
So, but creative control, do you mean?
Not even that. Not even that. We had an amazing team that... I mean, the dream situation is that you don't have to have any creative input because the people you work with are brilliant. And that was the case on that show. But when I mean control, I mean like the only person in charge of what's going out on screen at that moment in terms of what's being said and how it's being delivered is me. Like, I am the conduit through which all of that great work that other people have done, all the creativity is coming through. And being the host of something on live TV, because I do things like I'll go on like the Apprentice spin-off show, or I'll go on. I'm trying to think of something that's live, like
Britain's Got More Talent.
Britain's Got More Talent.
You do stuff like that.
Exactly, and it's like I don't get the same thrill from that. It's nice to be asked. It's great. I really enjoy doing it, but it's not the same as doing the job that Stephen's doing on that show, which is like, right, this show is on my shoulders. I am going to be delivering this in the way that I best see fit. That for me is a feeling that I haven't found any way to replicate anywhere else.
That's interesting. So talk to me about the Extra Factor gig with. They put you with Ryland.
Yeah.
I assume was that your idea or was that somebody else's idea?
I think it was a sort of conflation of ideas. I think that Simon Cowell, for some reason, wanted me on it. I think Ryland was maybe ITV's choice, and they went, okay, well, let's try them together. And I was a bit like, well, I don't know how this is going to go. And it just worked immediately. And it's very rare that you meet someone that you have that instant rapport with. And it's only really happened for me twice. It happened with Ryland, and it's happened with Molly, who does Radio 1 with me now, where you meet someone, you go, oh, we're totally on the same wavelength here. There's no sense of anyone carrying an ego. No one's looking for the punchline every time. You're totally trusting of each other's abilities. So you just feel like no matter how chaotic things get, you both absolutely know, without having to say anything to each other, how you're going to get through it.
So I know you have to be a little bit careful, but I am, as most people my age, I'm fascinated by Simon Cowell. So you just said he came to you.
So, from my understanding, he specifically asked for me, but that was having previously not given me the job. So 3 years prior to that, ITV said, oh, Matt, you should come and do Extra Factor. And at the last minute, Simon Cowell came in and said, he's not doing it, Ollie Murs is doing it instead. And that was quite a sort of like rug being pulled out from underneath me moment.
That must have been a bit of a big blow.
Oh, mate, it was awful. I had a really sort of like, again, quite a dark couple of years off the back of that, just feeling like my confidence had been knocked slightly. Then I assumed that I would never get to that job, which was frustrating because I thought I'd been really good at doing that job. And I kind of knew it within me, like, that is the kind of perfect thing that I should be doing. And then...
It's literally what you talked about that you liked when you were a kid.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. And then a few years passed, I kind of gotten over it, and then got a call. I was on holiday, got a call, and they said, do you want to come for a meeting about doing the X Factor? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that because it was traumatic last time. I don't want to do it.
Oh, really?
And they said, please come to the meeting. I went to the meeting, and they said, Simon has asked specifically for you. And I was like, I don't understand. He didn't give me the job 3 years ago. They're like, yeah, he works in mysterious ways, but we want you to come and do it. And then Ryan and I ended up doing it together and just had the best time. It's the most fun telly I've ever done.
Do you have much to do with Cowell, or is it? I mean,
no, God, no. I think he's an incredibly charming and magnetic person, and you can totally see why he's so successful. Because when you spend any time with him, he makes you feel like you are his world. You are 100% of his focus. So when he shines his light on you, and he really is one of the most famous people in the world. You know, like in the world. If you went to any part of the world and went, look, it's the Queen and it's Brad Pitt and it's Simon Cowell. He's at that sort of level. So when he gives you his attention and he's very complimentary, it can feel very nice. But you have to remind yourself, oh, he's kind of doing this with everyone. But he was great. He let us do what we wanted. He really cares about the product. Even though this was a spin-off show on ITV2, He would watch it. He would come back with notes. He would say, "I like this" or "I didn't like that." He was very, very, very. He's very involved in his products. And actually, as a person, he's just very nice and very charming. And were I to run into him in the street, it'd be very unlikely because he'd be in a car, I'd be on the street on my scooter. But I think he would remember that we'd worked together and would be nice.
That's really interesting. So I've got to ask you this because I watched it, thought you two were brilliant, genuinely, and everybody did. It was a lot of very positive feedback. But you even making jokes about it as the series was going on, that you weren't going to get the gig next year. No one seems to hold that gig down, do they, for more than a year? What? Well,
we killed it, but the show got literally cancelled the year after we did it. So it wasn't that they didn't have us back and they replaced us. We were irreplaceable because there wasn't a show to replace us on.
I just don't get it though. Like, surely they could find somewhere else for you on that show, or
there isn't a sexy answer to this. I think basically ITV signed a 3-year deal. That 3-year deal came to an end. They renegotiated that deal. They looked at their digital offerings and saw whether or not they were rating enough based on how much they were spending on the show, and thought, is the appetite there after however many years for people to turn over and watch this other show when there's so much else on? And they thought, no, we'd rather have the money to spend on things like Love Island or whatever else it is that they're doing. So it wasn't a personal reflection on us. I think if that had been the first year or the second year of that deal, we would have come back and done the next year. But it's just the way of the world. And that's the way of any kind of creative industry, is that nothing's around forever.
You and Ryden had great chemistry though. Have you tried to do some other things together since? Or?
I mean, he is the busiest man in show business and he's got so much going on. We sort of thought if the right thing came along in the aftermath, we might take a look at it. But there was nothing really that struck a chord with either of us. He moved pretty quickly on to doing a show called Babushka, which was for ITV Daytime. I moved on to doing Release the Hounds. So we were kind of doing stuff. He does Big Brother, obviously. I think if there was ever the right project for us to work together again, I would absolutely do it. Although I've slightly forged another partnership now with Molly on the radio, and we've started doing some telly bits together, and I think that's probably a more likely prospect going forward.
How does your wife feel about you constantly hanging out with one of the Saturdays, wasn't it?
She was in the Saturdays, yeah.
I mean, any girlfriend I've had would be furious about that.
She's remarkably chilled out about the whole thing.
Yes. You two do have a really great partnership, so do you think there'll be some chance to do some telly stuff with her as well down the road?
Yeah, I hope so. We hosted this morning together.
She belongs on TV, not radio.
Well, wait till I say about me, Richard.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I'm sorry. Yes.
I like to think of myself as the sexy one of the operation. So we did this morning, which we were really delighted to be asked to do together over the summer. To do that, which was very surreal and very exciting, and also
a viral hit from that, didn't you?
I had a viral hit, yeah, about Pepper.
You didn't know about Pepper, yeah, amazing.
Well, I was just trying to fill airtime, of
course.
And I mean, I have been seasoning chicken. I sort of slightly worried that would go so viral that I'd get like a KFC deal in the States. How many herbs and spices? I basically, for those who don't know, was in a cookery item and asked a woman about how much seasoning to put on chicken, because I'd said I used to not season chicken. And people found that preposterous.
I assumed you wrote it the night before as a definite viral hit.
So. No. If only, I've been trying for years to get something to go viral, and it's flipping Pepper that's done it.
See, I'm loving this episode because it's the longest we've ever not spoken about magic.
Oh, actually. Come on, let's talk about some magic.
No, it's really great, actually.
Because I've got a magic book for kids, we should talk about that.
I know, we're going to talk about that. So you've got 70 odd episodes I've made of this, and actually it's really great to diversify a little bit and talk about some more interesting things. Because what I think is one of the most interesting things we talked to you about, actually, is something a lot of people don't know about you, is over the last few years you've started a production company, accidentally on purpose, and you have pitched lots of magic stuff, haven't you? So magic is still part of your life in a different way. And also, I think you're a really interesting person to talk to the listeners here about your point on what you think magic should be on TV today. Because I know you probably can't talk about some of the shows you pitched just in case they come around again, but you've got some interesting ideas for magic on TV now that are not like what everyone's seen 100 times, right?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, format is what I really love. So I think it'd be very unlikely that I would see necessarily talent and think I must build a show around this person. But what I quite like doing is thinking, how can magic work as part of a format for telly, taking inspiration from other formats that have been successful in other territories, be they sort of comedy stuff or factual entertainment stuff. and working out how to inject magic into that. So it's not just a magic show, but it's a show with magic in it that has something else to offer. And I think actually the best shows do that. You know, think about Top Gear back in its heyday. Really, it should be a show for people that like cars. Now, I don't like cars, but I like that show because of the way they format it, the relationship, how it's cast, the relationship with the characters, and the cars are sort of the thing that holds it all together. It's its reason to exist, but it isn't the be all and end all of that show. And there'll be other shows about cars that I won't watch. And I sort of feel
also, sorry, just jumping, because it was bloody entertaining. The three of them were going and they're going by caravans, and
exactly.
So it was entertaining to someone who wasn't necessarily interested in that subject. And so then I think you've done some interesting things with magic that's similar.
Yes.
With some of the shows that you've tried to create recently, where even if you don't like magic, you'd still find it funny and entertaining because it just is at its core.
That was always the aim, is to find something that's entertaining, whether you do or if you love magic and you're going to watch it regardless because it's a magic show, great. But if not, the sole entertainment, I think, can't just rely on here is a trick. And that does work for some people and has worked incredibly successfully for some people. But normally those are personality driven vehicles. They are things where they have a star, be it back in the day David Blaine or Dynamo or Troy or whoever. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And it's really interesting. Netflix is doing loads of magic stuff now. Obviously, Darren's doing a new special from Netflix. The Justin Willman thing's doing pretty well for them. DMC's doing a show. And I think that the talent side of it is one thing, but actually the formatted side is another. It's an entirely different ball game. But yeah, I mean, I try and think up all kinds of telly shows. I like magic shows, I like quiz shows, I like comedy panel shows. I like kind of fat end entertainment shows. So the question is, it always starts with the idea. What's the idea, and what does it lend itself to? And you never know what idea you're going to have because
what is your process then? Where do you start when you? Let's talk about the panel show then. The rhyming show that you did with Len. Where did that begin as a process?
That's a slightly odd one.
Because it was a board game.
Because not really. It sort of started as a game that I played on text message with friends. I then did it on the radio. I then thought, this does well. I'll pitch it as a TV show. I pitched it. It didn't go anywhere. I thought, there's something in this. I'll do it as a board game. Did it as a board game. The people then came back and said, we've played that board game. We should do this as a TV show. So then we did it as a TV show. So that was a slightly odd one. In terms of generally the structure of these things, I find if I hear a brief, my brain can't help but solve that problem. So if I overhear that a channel is looking for this thing in this area...
How do you hear that? See, that's the thing I'm talking about. So, someone outside this, what's this about? You hear that a channel's looking...
Well, they will say, sometimes they'll say publicly at sort of seminars and things, as the Edinburgh TV Festival every year, or sometimes you'll know that they have got a show that they've decommissioned and they're going to be looking for something probably similar in that space. Sometimes you just have an understanding of the marketplace. You know what sorts of things channels generally are after. So you'll know that the BBC might be looking for something in shoulder peak, which is just before prime time. They're looking for like a quiz or a game or something there. So by having an understanding of the marketplace, you kind of get a sense of what might be around. So the easiest way, if someone says, we need a show about, a wildlife show about this, that does this job and does that job, that allows my head to go, okay, I've got the pieces of the jigsaw, I can work out what is going to be interesting here. And some days you just wake up with the idea fully formed in your head, it just presents itself to you and you go, oh, that's good. And you know when it's those ones because I get really excited about it and I basically have to get it out of me within the quickest time frame I can. And sometimes you'll have the nugget of an idea, you think, that could be good, but it's not there yet. And you just return to it from time to time, and then another bit will come, another idea will join it, and then eventually you get to the point you do something. So I made a show for ITV2 called Dress to Impress, which is like a fashion dating show. And
you were the voiceover on that.
I did the voiceover on it, yeah. But the process that show came about was I went into Topshop and Top Man, and I was at the time thinking about, I'd had a big conversation with someone about Facebook and about how they're doing like branded content and that sort of stuff. And so I had that in my mind. I was like, I reckon Topshop and Topman have got some money here to do something. And I was thinking, I wonder if there's like a street mate type thing in a guy going downstairs to Topshop and a girl going upstairs to Topman and then buying an outfit for each other that they wear on a date. I thought that's quite a nice, there's something quite mathematically pleasing about that concept. So that was the first thing that I had in my head. I was like, maybe I could do that as a thing. And then I mulled it over, and then one day somehow that idea morphed into, well, hang on, why am I doing this just for Topman and Topshop? This should be a thing where people date based on the clothes they choose for each other. Oh, well, that is really, there's a sort of tried and tested formula for that. One person would be the dater, the other person would go not see them and go off and pick the clothes for them, and they choose the date based on who they like the clothes of. And I was like, it must have been done. It must have been done. And I spend a lot of time saying that sentence to myself, like, this idea is there for the taking. Someone's got to have done this. So I Googled it and I searched around, no one had done it. And I was like, right, well, it feels like a show that already exists. I should just go and pitch it. And those are the ideas that are the best, where you go like, feels like someone should do this. And I also get that same feeling of frustration when someone comes up with a format that's so simple and elegant and straightforward, and you go, that was there. It was there for the taking. It's so simple. What that should have already existed. Why doesn't it exist? And I have that all day, every day, when I hear about new things that have been commissioned, where I think, should have thought of that.
So in the last few years, you've been into these pitch meetings with magic shows. What's the general sort of feeling from commissioners about magic at the moment? What are they looking for, or what sort of rejections do you hear?
I don't know they know what they're looking for until they see it. Magic, I think, is about to have another wave. I think I expect that the BBC will do something big in the magic space, probably back on Saturday tea time. I think it's quite hard to land solo talent who haven't built up, and there's nowhere really to build people up. So I suspect there will be a gang show type element to it.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, not Jesus Christ, I don't think, because I think that is a layer which is useful for then finding the stars. You can't just
tell me a gang magic show that found a star.
Well, obviously, Killer Magic found Chris Cox. Well, the problem is that those gang magic shows, Killer Magic on BBC Three. Well, okay, here's how a gang magic show found stars. If Monkey Magic hadn't existed, Jonathan wouldn't have gone off and done all of his stuff. He wouldn't be known to Telly. Pete Furman probably wouldn't be known to Telly. Wouldn't be often having done the TV career that he had, and I'm sure still is having. So those have been useful for those guys. The other gang magic shows, there aren't that many really, are there? Killer Magic.
You just made one, Trickheads. That was your company,
right? I did, made
yeah.
Trickheads for Comedy Central.
Yeah.
An interesting process making that show.
Okay.
I
was very impressed with Catherine's bit on that.
Thank you. And also I shall pass that thanks on to her. I thought she did a great job. It's a great vanish, right?
It's amazing.
It's a great vanish.
Absolutely amazing.
It's brilliant.
No sound problems with that one?
No sound problems.
Amazing.
No sound problems at all. That woman saw what you saw on TV.
Then genuinely it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great vanish. Really good.
So you say, people listen to this, they're trying to learn something when they listen to this, I think. So you say you think magic's about to have a new wave.
Yeah.
What direction is that wave heading in your opinion? And what sort of, more gang shows?
I think more light entertainment. So I think we're probably moving away from the kind of the serious magician a little bit. I think Darren and Dynamo have totally tied up their ends of the market and what they're doing. And actually I think that there's probably time for personality to shine through and to find a magician who is warm and charming and, dare I say it, the sort of the new Paul Daniels. And I think that I know you sort of furrow your brow at the gang show thing. I think if it's
I'm talking on behalf, actually. I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who will feel that, because we magicians, we just kind of feel like you're not creating a star when there's 5.
Well, you have the opportunity to stand out as a think about the 11 o'clock show, right? From that, you had Sacha Baron Cohen, Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant, Daisy, I forget her surname, Daisy Donnelly, I think it was, Ian Lee. You had...
That's a great example. I will give
people that come together, that do a small thing. Sacha Baron Cohen does Ali G, gets the Ali G show, goes off, becomes a Hollywood film star. No one, you can't arrive in Hollywood and say, hi, I'm a genius, give me money to make a movie. You need to prove that along the way. And that does require baby steps. And there are very few people that land... Claudia Winkleman did not land on Strictly Come Dancing, having never presented anything.
So basically what you're saying is the thing you started working on as a teenager, the Darren Brown, here's a TV show, no one's ever heard of you, you're saying that doesn't really happen anymore. Now it's going to be... I'm not
saying it can't happen, but that show, it wasn't as simple as we found Darren and here's a thing. I don't know what the process was. I have listened to your one with Andrew O'Connor.
Bloody hope so.
But it's great. But as a... from my understanding, it was... him pitching the concept, the format to Kevin Ligo. If I give you a mind reader, which hasn't been seen on TV for a long time, will you take it? Darren's show, whilst it was trick, it still had the overarching concept of here's a thing you haven't seen before.
Yes.
Here's a package you haven't seen before. And I do believe that Darren obviously was the best person to do that. Had it been someone else, it might not have sustained as well as it did with Darren, but the overarching idea of let's put a mind reader on telly is pretty good. So I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. And look at Netflix. DMC's just done a show. Justin Willman's just done a show. But they each have format attached to them.
Yes.
So they have format and they have talent. So I'm not suggesting that it's impossible. If you're a magician, don't go in and say, I want to do the My Name show. Find a format and put yourself in it.
Interesting. So let's do the shameless plug.
Go on.
Well, you wrote a book.
I wrote a book.
Well, first of all, I think it's just what's been amazing this podcast, just to see that all the stuff you do. You do loads of stuff, don't you? You've always got multiple projects going on, and I remember you surprised us with this a couple of Christmases ago. Is The World's Greatest Magician. Yeah,
so it's a book for kids, and it's the sort of book that I wish I'd had when I was a kid getting into magic, rather than a vanishing cigarette. There was a book that I was obsessed with as a kid called The Jolly Postman. I don't know if you've read it. If you've not, it's good. If ever you have a child in your life that you need to buy a gift for, that's the one to go for. Maybe I should say my own book's the one to go for. But Jolly Postman's really good. It's about a postman. He's jolly. He delivers letters to fairy tale characters, and there are envelopes that you can open and pull stuff out. So he'll give someone a jigsaw puzzle or give someone a little game to play or something like that. And I found it totally mesmerising as a kid. And I thought for years, why isn't there a version of this with magic tricks in it that are flat and made of paper or card that you can pull out and do that are tied into a story so it feels like there's some context around it? Because I think sometimes you can come a bit cold to a trick in a set and not really know why you're performing it, what it's about. You haven't really seen anyone do it. Whereas in the book, the character does the tricks or learns the tricks which forward the story, and then you get to pull them out and do them. So at least you can share a bit of that tale with the person you're showing them to. So yeah, it came out last year and it's just been lovely. I sort of got to go and meet loads of kids who don't know me from telly, but they do know me as a magician because I'm the guy who wrote the book. And so I went and did a book tour and had to do magic tricks for people. And it's just been so lovely seeing lots of little boys and especially lots of little girls picking up this book and doing the tricks from it. It's been really satisfying, and I'm just in the process of finishing the second book now.
Do you know roughly when that will come out?
Oh, I think it's out next Christmas, so 2019, Christmas 2019, I think. Okay. Yeah, and that's a sort of heist story where a trick goes missing, and there are lots of other tricks peppered within the book. But it's a really fun thing to write, and if you know any young people that like magic, get it for them for Christmas. It's like it's the one. Or if you don't know any young people, buy one of my many board games out now.
Yes, lots of board games. Obama Llama.
Obama Llama 2 out this Christmas. Santa Banter, the Christmas version of Obama Llama, to be played around the Christmas dinner table, and a new game called Dino Dump, which is a card game for all the family.
Fantastic. Matt, this has been great. Thanks so much for doing this. I know you're so busy with stuff. And
it's an absolute pleasure. I love listening to this podcast. I go to sleep to it sometimes, and I mean that, and that's the highest praise I can give it. Not that it's
weird.
incredibly dull, just that I find it very soothing. I've got a very busy brain, so I like listening to things as I go to sleep, and this is one that keeps me company often.
The pleasure's been all mine to have you on it, and hopefully you'll listen to yourself as you fall asleep.
I will, and then I'll get to listen to Alan Hudson deconstructing this interview.
That's coming next week.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks very much, Matt. Cheers.
Thanks, Richard.
What an amazing guy Matt Edmondson is. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. A few years ago I had the great pleasure of working with Matt on a couple of TV projects, and it was just amazing. He is so clever and creative. I hope you get a chance to do it one day as well. That's it for this week, but I just have enough time to wish you Happy New Year! And just because it's a new year, it doesn't mean there won't be a brand new podcast next week. Of course there will. So I will see you here again next Friday. Have a great New Year's Eve, a great New Year's Day, and I will see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.